Welcome to the latest Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.
Welcome to the Commercially Connected Bitesize podcast series from Evershed Sutherland. I'm Angela and my co-presenter is Sara Ellis. We're professional support lawyers in the commercial team at Evershed Sutherland, and today we're going to take a look at what's on the horizon for UK commercial lawyers in 2026. Whether you're a solicitor, in-house counsel, or just keen to stay ahead of the curve, this episode will bring you up to speed on the changes shaping our legal landscape.
There's a lot to get through, so let's start with payment practices, an issue that's front and centre for many businesses. Last year, the government put forward a set of proposals aiming to tackle the late payment culture that's long plagued the commercial sector.
Yes, now if these proposals go ahead, we'll see a mandatory maximum payment term of 60 days introduced. That means invoices must be paid within 2 months, no exceptions.
And that's not all. There'll be a 30-day period for verifying invoices. After that, disputes over invoices won't be allowed to delay payment. It's a move designed to give suppliers greater certainty that their bills will get paid and on time.
Plus, the government's looking to make statutory interest on late payments under the Late Payment of Commercial Debts Interest Act 1998 mandatory. So, businesses won't be able to agree a lower rate of contractual interest, and interest payments will accrue automatically if payment deadlines are missed.
Yes, and don't forget the reporting angle. The Reporting on Payment Practices and Performance Regulations 2017 are set for an update, adding new requirements to report on statutory interest, both what's owed and what's actually been paid.
So all in all, if these rules come into force, we could see a real shift in payment behaviour across supply chains.
Yes, and staying on the topic of supply chain, this year sees the first 5-year review of the post-Brexit UK-EU Trade and Cooperation Agreement, as well as further talks on the proposed UK-EU reset. As part of that, we're expecting a new sanitary and phytosanitary agreement, which should make it easier to import and export food and drink by cutting back on border bureaucracy, in a welcome move for the retail sector.
And as for ESG in supply chains, we're waiting to find out whether 2026 will finally be the year that we see reform of the Modern Slavery Act. In December 2025, the Independent Anti-Slavery Commissioner released a key report recommending new legislation to strengthen the UK's approach to forced labour and human rights. It includes a draft Forced Labour and Human Rights Bill, which the Commissioner is calling on the government to include in the next King's Speech.
If it's adopted, this bill would make large commercial organisations and public bodies liable for serious human rights abuses unless they can prove they've carried out reasonable due diligence. There would also be a UK-wide market ban on forced labour products, and Section 54 of the Modern Slavery Act would be replaced by mandatory human rights disclosure with penalties for non-compliance.
So if this legislation comes into force, it will mark a step change for the UK, and businesses are going to need robust policies and processes in place to stay compliant, including scalable human rights due diligence procedures and updated procurement processes and supplier codes.
Absolutely. And on a linked point, remember that from the 17th of May, new regulations come into force that require public bodies that are procuring goods or services for the NHS in England to carry out modern slavery risk assessments and take steps to address any risks identified. Suppliers to the NHS in England should expect to receive enhanced due diligence questions and flow-down terms.
Let's stay with ESG, but look at environmental matters. So from December this year, there'll be a ban on supplying wet wipes containing plastic to consumers in Wales, with the equivalent rules for England coming into force in May 2027. Manufacturers and retailers need to be ready for these deadlines, so it's a good time to review product lines, run down any existing stocks of non-compliant products, and make sure all wet wipes are plastic-free before the ban takes effect.
And for businesses selling into the EU, there's a host of EU environmental laws on the way. From September 2026, the Green Transition Directive will ban unsubstantiated general environmental claims, so that's things like environmentally friendly or climate neutral, as well as environmental impact claims that are based on emissions. So all suppliers will need to make sure they review advertising for compliance.
The Eco Design for Sustainable Products regulation also applies from this year. This sets out a framework for eco-design requirements for sustainable products, with product-specific delegated acts setting durability, repairability, and information requirements, including a digital product passport.
And from August, we have the Packaging and Packaging Waste Regulation, which aims to improve packaging circularity and tackle waste levels across the EU. Businesses will need to design packaging for recyclability, minimum recycled content, and reusability.
We're also expecting a new Circular Economy Act to be proposed towards the end of this year, with a focus on establishing a market for secondary raw materials and encouraging use of recycled material.
So, to aid compliance with all these different regulations, businesses should be thinking about building a register of product specific requirements and timelines, planning for product passport data capture, reviewing environmental claims substantiation processes and approvals, and budgeting for any redesigns and reprocurements.
Right at the end of this year, we've got the deforestation regulation, which will apply to large and medium operators from the 30th of December 2026. And to micro and small enterprises from the 30th of June 2027. The first operator to place the in-scope product, like cattle, cocoa, coffee, oil palm, rubber, soya and wood, on the EU market will need to produce a due diligence statement that their products haven't led to deforestation.
So, there's a lot going on in ESG. Let's switch gears now to consumer law. Changes to the Price Marking Order 2004 land on the 6th of April, making it easier for consumers to compare prices. So the rules are changing to include requirements for clearer unit pricing, bigger font sizes, and better visibility on the impact of loyalty schemes and bulk buying. Retailers are going to need to make sure they're updating labelling and pricing information to stay compliant.
The parts of the DMCC that apply to subscription contracts still need to come into force, though this won't happen before autumn. When they do come in, consumers will get new protections in respect of subscription contracts. These are the contracts that auto-renew or that start with a free or reduced price trial. And traders need to provide enhanced pre-contractual information, send reminder notices, offer extra cooling off periods, and make cancellation simple. This aims to clamp down on tricky renewal practices and keep consumers better informed.
And we're also waiting for the government to introduce new rules for online marketplaces to clamp down on the online sale of unsafe products. These could come this year under the framework of the Product Regulation and Metrology Act that came into force last year.
There are also plenty of changes to EU consumer law that will impact UK businesses selling in the EU. From the 19th of June, the Distance Financial Services Contracts Directive requires online traders to offer consumers a simple withdrawal function, making it as easy to exit a contract as it was to enter it. And from July, the Right to Repair Directive will extend repair obligations beyond warranty periods and mandate access to spare parts and repair information, meaning enhanced obligations for suppliers and manufacturers to EU consumers.
The updated Product Liability Directive will mean new responsibilities from December this year, with rules updated to make it easier for consumers to claim compensation for damage caused by defective products. And then in the last quarter of 2026, we're also expecting a proposal for a Digital Fairness Act to protect consumers online. And that's going to address unfair practices like dark patterns, addictive design, unfair pricing and digital content practices, unfair personalization practices, and harmful practices by influencers.
On the cybersecurity front, the Cybersecurity and Resilience Network and Information Systems Bill is set to overhaul UK NIS, with data centres, large load controllers and managed service providers being brought into scope, enhanced incident reporting obligations and new enforcement powers for regulators. This is also going to have an impact on downward supply chains as compliance obligations are flowed through contracts.
And the Cyber Action Plan was also published at the beginning of January, and this sets out ambitious plans to overhaul the government and public sector approach to cybersecurity and resilience. That's also going to impact suppliers to the public sector as we start to see stricter cyber provisions in public sector contracts.
We may also see new laws aimed at tackling ransomware. The government is considering a targeted ban on ransomware payments by public sector bodies and critical infrastructure providers, along with stricter reporting requirements for ransomware incidents.
And in the EU, we have the Cyber Resilience Act, which aims to make products with digital elements safe to use and resilient against cyber threats. Most of this doesn't start to apply until December 2027. But from the 11th of September 2026, manufacturers of products with digital elements will be required to notify actively exploited vulnerabilities and incidents that could affect the security of that product. Providers of in-scope products are going to need to comply with this new regime.
And finally, we have the field of digital and data. This deserves a podcast of its own, but just to note that the UK Online Safety Act, the Data Use and Access Act 2025, and the EU AI Act are still being phased in. And in the EU, we have the Digital Omnibus proposal, which aims to simplify the AI Act, GDPR, and cybersecurity reporting, and improve access to data. So we may see significant changes to these regimes.
So I think we can safely say that 2026 brings a fast-moving mix of reforms, from supply chain due diligence and environmental standards to consumer protections, cybersecurity, and data governance. Businesses that act early by updating contracts and strengthening compliance will be best placed to navigate the changes ahead. So thanks very much for joining us for this bite-size update, and we'll keep you informed as the year unfolds.
Thank you for listening to the Evershed Sutherland Legal Insights podcast.